Welcome again, everyone. And thank you for joining today's webinar. It's our third and final webinar this year on trade data upload, characterization, and evaluation. What we covered already in part 1 and part 2 that both took place during this month is we went into detail on how to work your Excel file and how to upload it and map it to accessions and descriptors in Genesys. Those recordings are available on YouTube, and you can refer to them anytime while you want to make your own uploads. Part 3 will continue, and we will be focusing more on the remaining steps in the uploading tool that is directly in Genesys. So there would be, after you have mapped and uploaded your Excel file directly in Genesys, there will be a few more steps that you need to do in order to send your trade data to publication. And we will also have a look very quickly at the end of this session how you can filter and browse through your published trade data. So this is more how your users would experience your data, how they would be able to filter it and visualize it, and also add some of these accessions that they filtered to their carts if they want to make material requests. So we will be going over that at the end and also taking questions before wrapping up. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I will go to the Sandbox platform. All right. So this is our, for those of you who are not familiar with this platform, it is the test website that we use only for demonstration and testing purposes called Sandbox. It mimics Genesys, but everything you upload here and everything you do will not be shown or uploaded in the official Genesys website. I will send you in the chat, in case you haven't received the login details, we have created an account that we will all be using just on this test platform to practice. You can log in using the username and password, but I ask you to please, whatever trade data you upload using this account, please write your name in the title because we are all using the same account, and for you to know which file is yours. I will log in here and then click again here. And I already have the username and password saved. So I want to go back to our trade data dashboard that's accessible from this button, My Dashboard, under this menu, Trade Data, Datasets. You see here, I will go to the one with my name on it from last time. Actually, I will use an even previous one because it has 3 descriptors mapped. So once I click on it, because as you see here, it is still in draft mode, I would be able to click on it and edit this information. If it were published, I would not be able to do that. So you see here all the information that we filled together in step 1. Next step, you see here the trade data file that we uploaded also last time. I'm gonna just click on it and show you very briefly what we did. I will click on View Dataset. And I show you here, so that's a preview. It's not published yet, but what we did is that we linked the accessions. You see here, there's links to the accession numbers because we linked them to existing accessions in Genesys from the Excel file. And you see here 3 descriptors only because that's what we mapped using this mapping tool that you can access here in the working file. If you click on the column header, we use this interface in order to map our Excel file to existing descriptors in Genesys and also map the data to that existing descriptor, or even create new descriptors on the go in this interface. That's what we did. That's where we are. And that's what is covered in the step 2 of this uploading this dataset publisher here. So what we would do in this session is we will continue these steps, assuming that we covered step 1 and 2 in previously. You can access how to fill those out, step 1 and 2, in previous recordings. So I will click on next step. When you go to step 3, this will give you a summary of how many accessions are going to have trade data published for them in Genesys. You see here it's 191 accessions, and there's here a list of all of them by order, and very minimal passport data. This passport data here that you see, sorghum, like the species, the full species name, the biological status of this accession, and the collection source, and also very basic information. For example, the institute, the gene bank that is conserving this accession, which is usually yours if you're uploading data on behalf of your gene bank, and the DOI if it's available. So this is very basic passport data here that is not included in the Excel file that I shared with you as a sample. So in this Excel, back to step 2, if we go here, we only have inst code and genus, an accession number. There's no species name or species authority or biological status. Those are not included. But you see that in step 3, because we managed to link our accession number to existing data in Genesys, then this links up to the passport data. You can, if your list is not too big, you can scroll through just to make sure that it all looks right and that the final number is correct, what you intended it to be. And there's here a disclaimer that's very important to note, that this list of accessions is generated from the dataset file you uploaded in step 2, and the entries without a link. So everything you see here with a blue link is linked to Genesys, but the entries without any link to an accession detail indicate that Genesys was unable to match the accession number to the accession record. If the accession number here is wrong, it doesn't exist in Genesys, then this would be black instead of blue, and there won't be a link to it. So in order to ensure that your trade data is linked to an accession in Genesys, you have to make sure that the basic passport data included in the Excel file you upload, which is inst code, accession number, genus, and DOI, are correct in your Excel file, are correct as they are in Genesys. And you see here we scroll and we don't see any accession we scroll until the end and all the accessions are linked. That's a file I worked on together with you in the first part of our webinar. I will go to the second here, the most recent one I have, the second file, to step 3. And I will show you that some of them are not linked. You see here, the first 3 are, so this accession does not exist in Genesys. I added the C, so this number doesn't exist. And here the genus is wrong. It's supposed to be sorghum. And I believe also this one doesn't exist. So you see here, passport data is not available in Genesys at this time. If you want to, so you see here 2 buttons. You can either clear this list entirely, and here it says that deleting this will remove all related data. So all of this connection to the accessions here will be disconnected. I will cancel it. I won't do it now. Or you can click on rematch accessions to kind of refresh those links. If you think that something might have gone wrong, you refresh. But it shows here that those first three are still unlinked because they don't exist in Genesys to begin with. So I will move on in this case to the next step. And here you see that you can add dataset creators. This is to give credit for the people in your gene bank or outside your gene bank if this trade data dataset was created in collaboration with your gene bank and a university or a research center. You can give credit to all people involved here. So I will click this button and I will fill the full name. So let's say, for example, Jennifer North. The role that you can, the 4 roles that you can choose from are either the data manager, so the person who's responsible for planning and executing the characterization and evaluation activity, and the person who oversees the collection and management of this data, and has the final approval of the publication. So the person who manages data at your gene bank, or specifically the person who managed this data of that trait data set. Either also it could be the data collector, the person who observes this data and enters it in a data collection form or sheet. So the people who are on the field. The data digitizer, if your data was collected on paper, you can also credit the person who transfers the trade data from paper to a computer, to a software. Or the data curator, so the person who organizes and validates the data and metadata in a correct format and ensuring the quality of both. Sometimes this can be the gene bank curator, if the gene bank curator happens to organize and validate the data and the descriptors, and ensure that they're in the correct format, and assign what descriptors to use and their definitions, and to ensure their quality. So let's say this person here is the data curator. Their institutional affiliation is our gene bank. This is just an example. Institutional affiliation here is the name, the English name, not the views code. It shouldn't be, for example, gay01, like it's not the views code, it's the actual name. And these are optional: email address, phone number, fax, and address. But you have to know that this information, email address, phone number, and fax, doesn't end up being public in Genesys. This stays internal. I will actually double check this because this is personal data. So before you share this personal information, please make sure to ask for the consent of that person. So, and of all the people you are adding as dataset creators before you share their personal information here. The institutional address is the address of the gene bank, not the address of the person. So that would be, for example, our gene bank campus, street number 1, city, country. This is all in text format. And you can proceed to add as many as you want for as many roles as necessary to this data set. So then once you're done with this process, and also please make sure to ask the management of your gene bank about this crediting here of people before you make this trade data public, especially if this if these observations or this activity was carried out with different institutes other than yours. Then we will move on to the next step, number 5, which is the location and timing. So this is the location and timing of this activity. So the location and timing of where this activity of collecting this trade data was carried out. You can add many if your fields were in different locations and if there were different timings to the collection of this data. The more you add, the better, because this is metadata associated with your data set. So the more we have that, the better it is. So I will show you how that works. So you click here. You may allow or block the automatic detection of your location. You can block it. It doesn't have to be, because this would detect where you are located. But what we want is where this trade data sample was, where this data was collected from. So the ISO code, let's say it was carried out in Kenya. The ISO country code would be Ken. The country full name would be Kenya. So here you can have really detailed information, even going down to the decimal latitude and decimal longitude of where a certain specific particular activity was carried out. Again, if your field, for example, in Kenya, if you did collection for trade data in different areas, you can add them in different locations. So you can add as many here information as you have available. You might not have the locality, you might not have the decimal longitude and latitude, maybe you only have the state. So you add as many information as you have. You see the only required information is the one that has an asterisk. So that would be the country. But the rest is not required. Also, that includes the starting date and the ending date of the characterization and evaluation, and the description of the environment and conditions at the site. Those are all not necessary information, but the more you have, the better. One note about the decimal latitude and longitude, those are in decimal degrees, so this would be the format. For example, latitude of 36 and longitude of 10. So it's not in the degree, minutes, seconds. It's in decimal, so it could be minus or plus. The starting date has the format of year, month, day. And if the month or day are missing, they should be replaced with 00. So for example, if I know that the starting date was in 2016 of August, so that's 08, but I'm not sure about the day, I just type in 00. So that's the starting date. And if the ending date was at the end of 2016, so that would be 2016 December, so 12. And also, I'm not sure of the day, so I replace it with 00. Description of the environment and conditions. It could be anything from the climate, when this data was being collected on the field. If you have also information about how humid it was on average, how hot or cold it was, and soil information. It doesn't have to be very specific data, just a general idea would be enough. So general idea of the climate and soil conditions of the site. Okay. So you see here when I typed, despite the fact that I typed Kenya as a country, because my decimal latitude and longitudes are specified, this pin is detecting the latitude and longitude, which is incorrect. So I will delete them and type Kenya and type the country code. And add another location here. And you can do the same for as many locations as you have for this trade data file that you're uploading. In case you accidentally click this button of add another location and this new fields opened up, but if that was an accident, you see you cannot here click on the next step because you have to fill this out, mainly the country, in order to proceed. So you need to delete this. You need to remove by clicking here at the top of this field, the trash can button, and confirm that you want to delete this empty field. And then you can move on to the next step. You see this button now is activated. I will demonstrate it again. So if you finalize the first location and you clicked on this by mistake, you see here you cannot move to the next step. So you have to delete this field, confirm the deletion, and then go to the next step. So step number 6 is about organizing trade descriptors. This is a bad example because I only have in this sample only one descriptor that you see I can move around, but because there are no other descriptors, I mean, there's nothing to compare to. So if you had many descriptors listed, you can shuffle them around to organize their order just by moving them around like this. And you can also click this button that will list all the unmapped descriptors in your original file that are discarded, that were not mapped to any descriptor in Genesys, that were kind of left out from your Excel file and are not going to make it to the final data set by clicking on this button. And here it says okay, so it's all good. And then you click on the next step to review everything, review how it would look like. And if it all looks good, you see here, you can only see the data curator, name and institutional affiliation and role. If you see here that this role is actually supposed to be dataset, if there was any mistake, like this was supposed to be the data manager, you can go back to step number 4 and click here on data manager, and then jump back to step 7. Refresh. You see here that there's a second field that is empty that's called dataset creator. So I clicked on this add dataset creator button by mistake. So I will remove it. And I would remove this one also because they're added by mistake. I only keep one. And then move on to the last step to see how this would look like. You see then there's only one dataset manager, Jennifer North. If I want to add another creator, I go back to step number 4 and click on add a new one. And it can be Richard Wayne, and it can be the data collector, and the institutional affiliation is local university. And then go to step number 7. and see here that it's added data collector Richard Wayne. So you can check all this information here and modify it in those steps as necessary. You see here the date so the date of dataset is when the date when you first uploaded it. That was 20 Feb. That was in our last webinar. That's when I uploaded it. That's when I created the metadata, which is when I started mapping the descriptors to Genesys, and when I last updated it. You see here also the location, the start and the end of the evaluation, a description of these locations. There's only one trait observed, and it's listed here. And this is a list of all the accessions. This is a description here that says it's a characterization of 190 accessions. But if I scroll down until the very end, I see that there is 194. So I might want to change this description here. So I can go back to step number 1 and change the description here. You will get familiar with this the more you upload data set of where to fix what. So it's characterization of 140 sorghum accessions between August 2016 and December 2016 in Kenya. Go to step number 7, and you see here the description. Okay, and then once you feel confident, you scroll down and you click on this blue button, send to review. And you see here, this will then redirect you back to your trade data dashboard, where you will see that the status of your trade data dataset has changed from draft to in review. And you can also filter the different data sets in your account according to their status here on this side. So I want to only filter for the one in review or the one that's published, etc. You can always reset here using this button. Once this status changes to review, what happens is that we on our side of the Genesys team, we receive a notification saying that this data set has been submitted to Genesys. What happens is that we would need to review it. This might take a few days to a week, depending on our capacity. So after reviewing it, we would approve it, and then the status would change to published. And only when the status is changed to published will your data set be public, and users other than you, so external people, will be able to see it directly on Genesys and filter through. If you have any questions so far, please type them in the chat. I will wait a minute or two before moving on to showing you how you can explore and filter through this published trade data. Maybe I see you have a question. If we've uploaded accessions handled by various data collectors, how can we effectively segregate them into their respective collections and assign appropriate management roles? So if you have many data collectors on the field, you want to segregate into their respective collections and assign appropriate management roles. Okay, I will go back to the dashboard here, to the trade data set. And you see, because it's still in review, I can still edit it. So I will enter this here and click on edit. So the dataset creators here are in step number 4. And your question was, if you have many data collectors, right? How can you segregate them and segregate their institutional affiliations? So what would happen here is that we have Richard Wayne from the local university, and if you have another dataset creator or a dataset collector, for example, Afolabi, from NAGRAB. So this is where the institutional affiliation will show as the dataset collector or as a data manager. You can add also another dataset collector here, and the institutional affiliation would be Crop Trust, for example, as many as you want. And if you move on to step number 7, you will see how this looks like. So you see here under dataset creators, so this is the trade dataset, how it would be finally visible. It would be, so the roles are here, person, their affiliation, role, person, affiliation, role, person, affiliation, as many as you have and as many as you need. Those can change depending on the data set. So for example, in one data set, Jennifer is the data manager. Maybe for another data set, she's a data collector or curator. This role that you define is only applicable for this specific trade data set here, and it can change in other trade data sets, because whenever you upload a new data set, you go through the same steps here by hand, and they can change how you want them to be. What is the way for the set to set the data creators when we don't know very well this information? What about if you only have the email of the principal author of the article and get the data set? So if you don't have all of this information, I mean, this information is not required to begin with. So if you don't have it, you can skip it. You can, I mean, I will show you if you click here on add the dataset creator, dataset manager, you can skip, for example, you can skip the email. You can just type here, Miguel Angel. And if you don't have the email or the institutional affiliation or any of the other information, then you don't have to add it. If you only have the email, sorry, without the name, I mean, unfortunately, the full name is required. So maybe it would be a good idea to email that person, ask them for their name, but also ask them for their consent, for their approval of you publishing their full name under this dataset creators. We've had a case where some institutes worked on a subset or on a trade datasets, and the people who were involved preferred not to include their names. So in this case, we just delete the entry and we don't include it. And all of this step can be skipped altogether, so you don't have to include any name at all. So you can just delete all of this information if you don't have any detail, or if the people prefer not to be mentioned. And if you skip to step 7, you see that there's no information about the creators at all. So either you, if you only have their email, you can email them, ask them for their consent, or if you then don't have their name at all and there's no way to communicate with them, then you can skip the step number 4. Or you can include in the description, if you only want to give credit to the institute, if there was more than one. So you can include this here in the description also. So let's say SIAT worked with many different universities, but you don't know exactly the people inside those universities. Then you skip step number 4 and you just give credit to those universities in general in the description here that you can fill out in step number 1. I hope that answers the question. And if there's any more questions, also please type them in the chat before we proceed to demonstrating how we can filter out this data. Another question is, are we establishing the location and timing for each accession individually or for the entire set as trade data? In other words, will the location of the trade data correspond to the institutional location or something else? So it's not about the location and timing of collecting data for every accession. Individually, that would be you would have like 200 different locations. But it's also not the location of the institute. So, for example, let's say NAGRAB in Nigeria collected information or trade observations on 300 accessions. Half of them were in one field, let's say, and that was close to NAGRAB, that's close to the gene bank. And the other half was 5 kilometers away in a university nearby. What you can have here is 2 locations in this case, both in Nigeria, and you can include the decimal latitudes and longitudes of the field that is close to NAGRAB. And you can even include state and more details on the locality. And you can add another location that is 5 miles away at the university, at the field of the university. So it's not for every single accession. It could be more general like that. And also, if you have collected information at the same location, but at completely different years, let's say you had one iteration that started in 2016 and ended in 2016. And then you had another also in Nigeria, but that started in 2018 and then also ended in 2018. You can also show that here. So even if you have the same location, but different timings, different starting dates and end dates for the same trade data sets, you can also mention it here. But it doesn't have to be as specific as for every accession. And it's certainly not the location of your gene bank. It's where the observations were taking place. I have here another question. Is it possible to add more data, like new columns, if, for example, in the next year of publication, we evaluate other variables? I would say this would depend on what are those new columns, if it makes sense for them to be merged with this original trade data. If it makes sense for example, here we have 2 files, you see. So it is possible. It is possible then when you publish your data set, it's possible for you to edit it later on. So you can send us an email saying, please unpublish this data set, send it back to draft mode. When we do that, when we unpublish it, it would be back in draft mode, so you can edit. And you can go here to step 2, and you can add as many files as you want. You see here in this file, right-click, open a new tab to preview. You see there's 174 items. Sorry. Again, I will preview here, right-clicking on View Dataset and opening in a new tab. There's 157 items in the first file, and in the second file, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yes, and to answer your questions, you can add also as many files as you want later on, and they will be merged together in the final data set. You will be able to see them all here. So you can add more accessions and also more accessions and other descriptors and map them here in step number 2, and they would be all kind of merged together at the end. That is a possibility, but also you have to see if it makes sense to if it makes more sense to make it a separate trade data set, or if it makes more sense to include it with this one here. That's something to discuss with internally in the gene bank, but it is a possibility here. And also then if this additional data was created the next year, it would also make sense to add here a location and timing, add another location, and add another starting date and ending date also. It would make more it would be good then to include also the fact that, you know, there's separate timings also. Okay, if there are no more questions in the chat, I will go then. I will move on from Sandbox and I will go to the official Genesys website just to briefly show you, after you publish your trade data, what happens, what next. So after you publish your trade data in the official Genesys website, it would be visible under this menu item called accession data, in the third submenu called characterization and evaluation data sets. So if you click here, you will be able to see the list of all trade data sets we have in Genesys as public. And you can filter them here. You can filter them by data provider. You can filter them by evaluation site. That's the location that you would have added in your trade data, either by country or by coordinates. You can also filter by crop. So let's say I want to see only forages trade data sets. So you can filter them here and apply filter, and you see only the forage trade data here. You can also filter by accession number, genus, FAO institute codes of the holding institute and the DOI. So you can filter by these data sets according to the accession numbers or DOIs inside of these data sets, license type, or the specific data set. You see here the data set tag or unique number that's here. You can filter it here. Sorry, that would be, if you click on an individual data set, that would be the unique tag. You can copy it from the URL and filter for it here. You see here. That's how you filter for. And you can reset all of these. Just for the sake of this demonstration, we're just going to go ahead with the first one we have. Click on it. You see there's a description here, brief one, more details about the crop, the gene bank that published it, how many accessions are included, and how many traits. Start and end of evaluation are not provided. The data manager, so the creators are listed here, the data digitizer, the license, and even users can download the Excel file, the metadata, and the MCPD. So the passport data of all of these accessions in the straight data set can be downloaded easily from here. And you can also click on preview just to have a preview directly in Genesys. So this is a preview of the Excel file that will be downloaded. Some other metadata. When was this data set published and when was it last edited? The traits observed, so all the descriptors linked to this data set and their description, and a list of all the accessions. The more interesting part is this big green button, because once you upload your trade data using this method that we've demonstrated throughout this month and these 3 parts of this webinar series, once you've done that, if you click on this green button, your trade data will be searchable directly in Genesys. So you don't have to, your users or your gene bank, you don't have to download any Excel file and do any analysis. You can do it directly in Genesys. So what I did basically is on the page of this trade data, I just clicked this green button over here, and this redirected me to my trade data set, to the observations pane directly in Genesys. I can see the accession number here that has a link. And if I open this link in a new tab, I will see that this takes me to the passport data of this accession. So you see this is the passport data that is in this link. The passport data is not included here. You only see the trade data that you've uploaded with a link to the passport data. So you can see the trade data here. And other than seeing the trade data, you can also filter every single column by the different values. I will show you how the different filters work. So the first filter would be historical or not. So some accessions in your gene bank might be discarded, might be present at some point, and then they were they were discarded, they're not active anymore. Maybe the material is not alive or just doesn't exist in the gene bank anymore. You can still upload the trade data for those if it's from a long time ago, but you still want to have the data public. You can still do that, and you can still filter according to the status of the accession. You can choose to include only the active accessions or have a look only at the historic accessions. The historic are those those accessions that are discarded from your gene bank. You see here, there's 0 historical accessions in this trade data set. I will just reset, but the possibility is here. You can also filter by accession number. You can filter by biological status of the accession. This information is not included in your data set, but it is retrieved automatically from the passport data from these links here. So you can filter for them. This is information that you would have provided previously when you upload passport data of these accessions. So you can filter by wild. You see there's 150 wild accessions here. This is because this gene bank already provided the biological status of all of these accessions, so we can filter by them. And then after those initial information, we move on to filtering by the different descriptors we see here, the different values. So all the categorical values, we had a look at the different types of data. So the categorical data is, for example, here, determinate, indeterminate. Color is also a type of categorical value. Leaf shape, everything that's not numerical, basically, or scale is a category. One thing to note that when you click on determinate, this would include all of the accessions that have determinate in their plant growth pattern, regardless of the rest. So the rest is unfiltered. We're only filtering for plant growth pattern here, determinate, and you will see this filter here in this filters pane over here. If you want to remove this filter from a plant growth pattern 1, so 1 is determinate, that's the code, you can just close it. And, you know, this would take you back to your original accessions without filtering for determinate or indeterminate. You see here under this plant growth pattern filter, under these categories here, you see the link to the descriptor. If you open it in a new tab, this would take you to the details of the plant growth pattern descriptor, the allowed values, the codes, and what their labels are, etc. You would see more details about that descriptor here in this link. It is the same for every descriptor here. So the next column is plant growth habit. Let's say I only want creeping and prostrate. I apply filters, and I only get 82 items of creeping and prostrate. I can remove prostrate and only keep creeping. That would be 52 items. And maybe I want the creeping accessions with a plant height that is at least, so we see here a minimum of, let's say, 80 centimeters, or let's say a minimum of 90 centimeters. So I type 90 in the minimum field and I keep the maximum empty and I hit on apply filters. So you see here I have 5. I narrowed down my search to only 5 accessions with a creeping plant growth habit that have a plant height higher than 90. So when you select from, when you filter different descriptors, this would act as the Boolean logic and. So it's this and that. If you are selecting many categories in the same, under the same descriptor, it would act as the Boolean logic or. So if I'm selecting here those 3, this acts as either creeping or prostate or semi-erect. But if I'm selecting between different descriptors, it would be creeping and higher than 90, not creeping or higher than 90. That's something to keep in mind. And it's the same basically for the rest of the descriptors. They're all either categorical or numerical here, except for the last one, which you see is scale. Scale is has a type of order, and you see here the order in this scale descriptor if the plant leafiness is poor, medium, good. It follows a certain order. So the way you filter this scale descriptor is you just click on this element and you drag, and you see it can go to in between 3 and 5 or in between 5 and 7. You just click and drag to select the range and click on apply filter. So you see here in this trade data set, there's only one accession that has a plant height higher than 90 and that has a plant growth habit of creeping, and it has a plant leafiness between poor and good, like something between poor and medium and good. So there's only that one accession. So that's how we narrow it down. So let's say you or your users are interested in this accession. You can just tick on it here. You see, if you notice this number, when I tick and untick, the number changes here in my list. This means when I tick on this accession, it means that I have added this accession to my list. And this is where I can make a request for a material to the gene bank. So this is how your users would then proceed to request the gene bank material from your gene bank through Genesys. So that's one way for them to filter out this material. If I go back, it would take me to the trade data set without any filters. And I can also choose to add many accessions that I filter for. For example, if I want to add all the accessions that have a plant leafiness between 4 and 6, and that have a minimum height of 90. I can also choose a maximum height of 90. So I type 90 in the maximum field. And if I want an exact height of 90, I should type 90 both in the minimum and maximum. And you see there's only one item that has an exact height of 90, and that has a plant leafiness between 4 and 6, and the scale that we have, so between poor, medium, and medium and good. And I say maybe I want to, maybe one accession is too little, maybe I want more, so I can, close one of the filters. Let's say I keep the height flexible, so everything that is above 90, and I can select all of these 9 items at the same time by clicking here instead of clicking manually on every one of them. I can click here, and this would select all of these accessions, and I have to make sure to click then on this button here and click on Add to my list. So instead of clicking those 9 accessions manually, I just do that. You can also remove them from your list. Instead of doing it one by one, you can also do the same. So you can click on all of them here, click on this radio button below, and click on Remove from my list. And then unselect this one. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell. I invite you to use the Sandbox account to test an upload of a trait data set of your gene bank instead of the sample file. Just try it out, upload it. It's not going to be visible in Genesys. Just see how it goes, and send us any questions you have. This would basically be the wrap up of this trait data upload sessions. You now have all the information you need to go ahead and start uploading. So I wish you a great day or evening ahead wherever you are, and we see you in the next webinar this year. Bye-bye.